Because at its very base, religion is a system of beliefs and practices, and because beliefs are a really tricky thing to get at as an anthropologist, because it's trying to get inside people's heads and figure out, and even we ourselves believe certain things, and some of those things we believe in we're aware of, and others we might not be as aware of. But because belief systems exist in a unified system with practices, practices are a really fantastic window for anthropologists and even for adherents themselves to learn about the belief system of that particular religion. Precisely because it's a unified system, precisely because the beliefs are enforced in the practices and the practices are enforced in the beliefs, the practices become this really wonderful way where the community is saying to itself out loud and to anyone else who might happen to be there what it is that they believe. You are now taking this communion bread because we believe that Jesus died for us on the cross, and this piece of bread is no longer a piece of bread, it's his body, and we are now collectively partaking of Jesus' body because we ourselves become part of the Christian body, right? So these practices are these wonderfully rich windows for anthropologists to learn what it is that what is the belief system, which ultimately gets us back to the question of what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be human to this particular group of people, to this collective moral community? So ritual is something that a lot of anthropologists of religion focus on. And here are some useful definitions of religions. So here's one. This comes from the Encyclopedia of Social and Cultural Anthropology, published by Routledge. And this definition reads, ritual either involves different forms of action from everyday life, or at least for different purposes. The difference relates to meaning attached to the ritual act, which is suggested by the use of symbols. David Kurtzer, who's an anthropologist, writes, ritual is action wrapped in a web of symbolism. And so we see that in both of these definitions, the key to ritual is symbolism. So we say that religion is comprised of beliefs and practices that reinforce one another, and rituals are these wonderful moments for adherents and anyone else who might happen to be there to learn what it is that the religion believes in. And the way they do it is through the practices. But as these definitions say, these are not just anyday practices. They're either practices that are set aside, that are different from everyday practices. So walking on hot coals, or crossing yourself, or praying. These are practices that you might not do in everyday life. Or they're practices that you might do in everyday life, but in the ritual context you're doing it for different purposes. So eating bread, for example, might be, or drinking wine, might be something that you do in everyday life, but here you're doing it for different reasons. And the difference is that in this context you're doing it for symbolic reasons. So some people say that the most basic component of a ritual is a symbol. That rituals are rife with symbols. In fact, their very function is to act symbolically, because it's those symbols that teach you that one thing, the thing you're doing, stands for another thing, the thing that you believe in. So symbols are in some ways the atoms of a ritual, the most basic component of a ritual, and when you put them all together, it structures into a ritual that then confirms the beliefs as they relate to the sacred and the profane.